I'm sitting in a lawyer's office in downtown Toronto, staring at a number on a computer screen that doesn't make sense. $53 million. The banker across from me has gone completely pale, and my hands are shaking so badly I can barely hold the faded yellow envelope that changed everything. But let me back up, because 3 months ago, I had nothing. Less than nothing, actually. I was living in my car outside a Tim Hortons in Mississauga, wondering if I'd make it to my next birthday. My name is Linda Rousseau, and I'm 61 years old. For 38 years, I was married to a man I thought was my soulmate. Robert Rousseau and I met at McGill University in 1982. He was studying business, I was in education. We got married in 1986, had our daughter Claire 2 years later. I became a French teacher at a high school in Montreal. He built a successful import-export business. We had what I thought was a beautiful life. When I turned 55 in 2018, I took early retirement. Robert said we had plenty of money, that I'd worked hard enough. I trusted him completely. Why wouldn't I? We'd been together for over 3 decades. He handled all our finances, all our investments. I never questioned it. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was not seeing what was happening right in front of me. In the spring of 2023, I started feeling tired all the time. Really tired, not just normal fatigue. I went to the doctor, got some tests done. They found a mass on my pancreas. Cancer. The word hit me like a freight train going full speed through a crossing. Robert was wonderful at first. Drove me to appointments, sat with me during chemotherapy, held my hand when I couldn't stop crying. Claire flew in from Vancouver every few weeks to help. My younger sister Diane came up from Ottawa to stay with us. I felt so loved, so supported. The treatment was brutal. There were days I couldn't get out of bed, days I couldn't remember my own name from the medication. Robert started bringing home stacks of papers for me to sign. Insurance forms, he said. Medical authorizations. Updates to our will, just to be safe. I was so out of it, so sick, I just signed whatever he put in front of me. Don't worry about it, honey, he'd say, holding the pen steady for me. I'm taking care of everything. I trusted him. God help me, I trusted him completely. By October 2023, the cancer was in remission. Miracle of miracles, I'd beaten it. I was weak, I'd lost 40 pounds, but I was alive. I remember the day the oncologist told me the scans were clear. I cried for an hour straight. Robert held me and said, "See, I told you everything would be okay." 2 weeks later, he asked me for a divorce. I actually laughed when he first said it. I thought he was joking, that the stress had gotten to him and he was having some kind of breakdown, but his face was stone-cold serious. "I'm leaving you, Linda," he said. We were sitting in our kitchen in Westmount, the house we'd lived in for 20 years. "I've already filed the papers. You need to move out by the end of the month." "What are you talking about?" I couldn't breathe. "Robert, what's happening?" "I want a divorce. It's over. I've met someone else." Someone else. Her name was Natalie Beaumont, and she was 34 years old. She'd been his assistant for the past 2 years. Of course she had. But it got worse. So much worse. "The house is in my name," Robert continued, like he was reading from a script. "The business is in my name. The investment accounts, the retirement funds, everything. You signed the transfer papers last spring." "What transfer papers?" "Robert, I was dying. I was on morphine half the time. What did you make me sign?" He shrugged. Actually shrugged. "You signed them. It's all legal. My lawyer confirmed it." I found out later that his lawyer was a man named Marcus Chen, a specialist in asset protection and apparently in screwing over sick wives. They'd planned the whole thing. While I was fighting for my life, my husband was systematically transferring everything we owned into his name alone. The house, his business, our savings, my teacher's pension that I'd rolled into a joint account, everything. The total value was roughly $2.4 million. Gone, all of it. "You can't do this," I said. "We've been married for 37 years. This is my home. That's my money too." "Take me to court if you want," he said, "but you'll lose. You signed everything over voluntarily. You have no legal claim to any of it." I called Claire that night, sobbing so hard I could barely speak. "Mom, there has to be a mistake," she said. "Dad wouldn't do this, he loves you. He's leaving me for his assistant, Claire. He took everything." There was a long pause. "Mom, I need to tell you something. Dad called me last week. He said you've been acting strange since the cancer treatment, that you're paranoid, making accusations. He said you might need psychiatric help." My own daughter. He'd gotten to my own daughter. "Claire, I'm not crazy. I'm telling you the truth. I think you need to rest, Mom. The treatment was really hard on you. Maybe you're confused about what you signed. Dad said he's been trying to protect you." She believed him. Of course she believed him. He was her father. He'd always been the stable one, the responsible one, and I was the sick woman who'd been pumped full of chemicals for 6 months. I had nowhere to go. Diane offered to let me stay with her in Ottawa, but she was going through her own divorce and living in a one-bedroom apartment. I couldn't impose on her like that. I had about $800 in my personal checking account, the only thing Robert hadn't cleaned out. Everything else was gone. I moved into a women's shelter in Montreal for a few weeks. Then I bought a beat-up 2007 Honda Civic for $500 and started living in it. I parked in different places each night. Tim Hortons parking lots, mall parkades, quiet residential streets. I showered at community centers. I ate at soup kitchens. Me, Linda Rousseau, who'd had a master's degree and taught French literature for 30 years, was homeless. The humiliation was crushing, but the betrayal was worse. The man I'd loved for almost 40 years had looked me in the eye while I was dying and stolen my entire life from me. I tried to get a lawyer, but every single one I spoke to said the same thing. If I'd signed the papers, even under duress, it would be almost impossible to prove coercion. It would cost tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees just to try, and I'd probably lose. Money I didn't have. I thought about ending it. I really did. One night in late November, I sat in that freezing car with a bottle of sleeping pills I'd saved from my cancer treatment. It would be so easy. Just take them all, go to sleep, and never wake up. No more pain, no more humiliation, no more sleeping in parking lots at 61 years old. But something stopped me. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was anger. Maybe it was the tiny photograph I had of Claire when she was 5 years old, taped to my dashboard. I deserved better than this. I deserved to fight. The problem was, I had no weapons left to fight with. That changed on December 8, 2023. I was going through a cardboard box I'd salvaged from the house, one of 3 boxes that contained everything I'd been allowed to take. Old photos, a few books, some random papers. At the very bottom, wrapped in a plastic grocery bag, I found something I'd forgotten existed. A manila envelope, yellowed with age, with my maiden name written on it in my grandmother's handwriting. Pour Linda Dubois, à n'ouvrir qu'en cas d'urgence. For Linda Dubois, only open in emergency. My grandmother, Marguerite Dubois, had died in 1999. I was at her funeral. I'd helped clean out her apartment in Quebec City. I vaguely remembered her giving me this envelope, telling me to keep it safe, but that was 24 years ago. I'd packed it away and forgotten about it. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter, dated June 1968, and a small brass key. The letter was in French, in my grandmother's careful script. Ma chère Linda, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and you are in need of help. I want you to know that you come from a family of strong women, women who survive. In 1968, your grandfather Claude tried to leave me for another woman. He thought I was just a housewife with no money of my own. He was wrong. My father, your great-grandfather, was a timber merchant in Quebec City. When he died in 1955, he left me an inheritance. I never told Claude about it. I put every penny into an investment account at Banque Nationale in my name only. I have been adding to it for years, and I have never touched it. This is for you, for your future, for your security. The account number is on the back of this letter. The key is for my safety deposit box at the Banque Nationale branch on Grande Allée in Quebec City. Box number 247. Inside you will find all the documentation. Use this money wisely. Use it to build a life where no man can ever take anything from you again. Je t'aime, Grand-Maman Marguerite. I read the letter 3 times before I could process what it meant. My grandmother had a secret bank account. Since 1968, that was 55 years ago. The rational part of my brain said it was probably empty by now, or closed, or seized by the government for inactivity. But there was a small, desperate voice inside me that whispered, "What if?" The next morning, I drove to Quebec City. It took 4 hours in my dying Honda. I had $23 left to my name. The Banque Nationale on Grande Allée was a beautiful old building with marble floors and brass fixtures. I felt like a homeless person walking in there, because I essentially was. My coat was from the Salvation Army. My boots had holes in them. I hadn't had a proper haircut in months. "I need to access safety deposit box 247, I told the woman at the customer service desk. It belonged to Marguerite Dubois. She looked at me skeptically. "Do you have the key and proper identification?" I showed her both. She made a phone call, checked something on her computer, then nodded slowly. "The box is still active. Follow me, please." My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. She led me down to the vault, used her key and mine to open box 247. Inside was a large envelope. "You can use that private room over there," she said, pointing to a small office. I sat down and opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were documents. Lots of documents. Bank statements, investment records, letters from financial advisors. I started reading, and the numbers made me dizzy. In 1968, my grandmother had deposited $45,000 into an investment account. That was a fortune back then. Over the years, she'd added more. Small amounts, 500 here, 1,000 there. Money she'd saved, money she'd hidden from my grandfather. The investments had grown. Stocks, bonds, mutual funds. The bank had managed it conservatively but effectively through the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. After my grandmother died in 1999, the account had just sat there, still growing, still accumulating interest and dividends. I found a letter from 2015 sent to my grandmother's old address stating that the account had passed $1 million in value. At the very bottom of the stack was a document dated November 2023, just a few weeks ago, an automatic quarterly statement. Current account balance, $53,217,412. $53 million. I actually blacked out, just for a second. When I came to, I was slumping in the chair, and the bank officer was knocking on the door asking if I was all right. "I need to speak to a manager," I said. "Right now." They brought me to a private office. I showed them the documents. A manager named François Bélanger went white as a sheet when he saw the account number. "Madame Rousseau, we've been trying to locate the owner of this account for years. The last address we had on file was your grandmother's apartment, but mail kept being returned. We couldn't close the account without proper authorization, so it just kept growing." "It's mine," I said. "According to this letter, my grandmother left it to me. We'll need to verify everything, of course. We'll need your grandmother's death certificate, proof that you're her heir, legal documentation. But if everything checks out, yes, this account belongs to you." I started crying. Right there in the bank, I sobbed like a child. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked with François and the bank's legal team to transfer the account into my name. My grandmother had written a will in 1997, leaving everything to me. I was her only grandchild. The bank had a copy on file. Everything was legitimate. Everything was legal. On December 22, 2023, I became the owner of an account worth $53 million. The first thing I did was book a room at the Fairmont Le Chateau Frontenac, the fancy hotel overlooking the St. Lawrence River. I took a bath that lasted 2 hours. I ordered room service. I slept in a real bed for the first time in months and cried myself to sleep, but this time they were tears of relief. The second thing I did was hire a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. I did my research and found one of the best family law attorneys in Quebec, a woman named Sophie Tremblay. Her retainer was $25,000. I paid it without blinking. "Tell me everything," she said. I told her about Robert, about the papers I'd signed while I was sick, about losing everything. I showed her my grandmother's letter and the bank statements. Sophie smiled. It was not a nice smile. Linda, your husband made several very stupid mistakes. First, he committed fraud. Coercing a sick person to sign legal documents under duress is illegal. Second, he didn't know about this inheritance, which means he can't touch it. It's yours alone. Third, he's already spent some of your joint assets on his new girlfriend, which is misappropriation of marital property. We're going to destroy him. It took 3 months. 3 months of depositions, court filings, forensic accountants going through every transaction Robert had made. Sophie was ruthless. She found everything. Robert had bought Natalie a $30,000 engagement ring with money from our joint savings. He'd taken her on a vacation to Turks and Caicos using our travel points. He'd given her a signing bonus of $50,000 from his business account, which was half mine according to Quebec's matrimonial property laws. And the papers I'd signed? Sophie brought in 3 different doctors who testified that I'd been in no condition to understand complex legal documents while on high-dose chemotherapy and pain medication. She argued that Robert had taken advantage of my illness to defraud me of my share of the marital assets. The judge agreed. In March 2024, the court ordered Robert to return everything: the house, half the business, half the investments, half the retirement funds. $1.2 million, plus my legal fees, plus damages for emotional distress. But that wasn't even the best part. The best part was when Sophie found out that Robert had lied on several tax returns, hiding income from his business. She reported him to the Canada Revenue Agency. They opened an investigation. By April, Robert was facing criminal charges for tax evasion and fraud. His fancy lawyer, Marcus Chen, dropped him as a client. Natalie broke off the engagement when she realized Robert was about to lose everything. His business partners forced him out of the company. I watched his entire life collapse, and I felt nothing but satisfaction. In May 2024, I sat in a courtroom and watched Robert plead guilty to multiple counts of fraud and tax evasion. The judge sentenced him to 4 years in prison. He was 63 years old, and he was going to jail. As they let him out in handcuffs, he looked at me. Really looked at me, for the first time in months. "Linda, please," he said. "I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Please, help me." I stood up, walked over to him, and leaned in close. "You looked at me while I was dying of cancer and stole my entire life from me," I said quietly. "You turned my daughter against me. You made me homeless. And now you want my help? Go to hell, Robert." I walked out of that courthouse and didn't look back. Claire called me that night. She was crying. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have listened." Part of me wanted to hang up on her. Part of me wanted to make her suffer the way I'd suffered. But she was my daughter, my only child. "Come to Montreal," I said. "We need to talk." She flew in the next day. We met at a cafe in Old Montreal, the same cafe where Robert and I used to have coffee when we were dating in the 80s. "I don't know how to apologize enough," Claire said. "Dad manipulated me. He lied to me, but I should have trusted you." "Yes," I said. "You should have. Can you forgive me?" I looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She had my eyes, my grandmother's chin. She was 36 years old, and she'd made a terrible mistake. "I can forgive you," I said, "but things need to change. You're an adult, Claire. You need to think critically, even about people you love, especially about people you love. Your father almost destroyed me because you believed his lies instead of listening to me. I know. I'll do better. I promise. And I'm not giving you any money," I said. "Not now. Maybe not ever. You need to build your own life, make your own way. I love you, but I'm not going to be the kind of mother who enables dependency." She nodded. "That's fair. But I'm here if you need me, for advice, for support, for love, just not for money." We hugged. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. I bought a beautiful condo in Montreal's Golden Square Mile, overlooking Mount Royal. 3 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, a doorman. I furnished it exactly how I wanted, with art and books and comfortable furniture. I donated $2 million to cancer research at the McGill University Health Center. I set up a scholarship fund for single mothers going back to school. I gave $500,000 to women's shelters across Quebec. I traveled. I went to Paris, to Rome, to Barcelona, places I'd always wanted to see but never could because Robert said we couldn't afford it. Turned out we could have afforded it just fine. I reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with. I took painting classes. I volunteered at a literacy center, teaching immigrants to read French. I lived my life on my terms, and it was beautiful. My sister Diane came to visit me in July. We sat on my balcony drinking wine and watching the sunset over the city. "You know," she said, "I always wondered why Grandmaman Marguerite was so insistent about women having their own money. I thought she was just old-fashioned, paranoid." "She wasn't paranoid," I said. "She was smart. She survived what I survived, probably worse, and she made sure I could survive too." "You think she knew? That this would happen to you?" "I think she knew that bad things happen to women who trust too much. She gave me a way out." Diane raised her glass. "To Grandmaman Marguerite." "To Grandmaman," I said. I saw Robert one more time, about a year later. He'd been released early for good behavior, served only 2.5 years. I ran into him at a grocery store in Montreal. He looked old, broken. He was working as a cashier. "Linda," he said when he saw me. "Robert, you look good, really good." "I am good," I said. "I really am sorry. For everything. I was an idiot." "Yes," I said, "you were. Is there any chance? Could we maybe talk sometime? Have coffee?" I looked at this man I'd spent 37 years of my life with, this man who'd held my hand through chemotherapy and then robbed me blind, this man who'd betrayed me in the cruelest way possible. "No," I said. "We have nothing to talk about. You made your choices, Robert. Now live with them." I walked away and never saw him again. People ask me sometimes if I regret marrying him, if I wish I could go back and change things. The answer is complicated. I regret trusting him blindly. I regret not paying attention to our finances, not protecting myself. I regret teaching my daughter that love means never questioning, never verifying, never protecting yourself. But I don't regret the life I lived before everything fell apart, because it taught me something crucial. You can survive anything. You can lose everything and build it back up again. You can be betrayed by the people closest to you and still find your way back to yourself. My grandmother knew that. She lived through it, survived it, and made sure I could too. The money changed my life, obviously. But it wasn't the money that saved me. It was knowing that I came from a line of strong women who refused to be victims. It was my grandmother reaching across 24 years from beyond the grave and saying, "You deserve better. Fight for it." So that's what I did. I fought, and I won. I'm 61 years old. I have more money than I'll ever need, a daughter I'm rebuilding a relationship with, and a life that's entirely my own. I sleep in a comfortable bed every night. I never have to worry about money again. I never have to depend on anyone. But more than that, I have my dignity back. I have my power back. Robert took almost everything from me, but he couldn't take that, and in the end, that's what mattered most. If there's one thing I want people to understand from my story, it's this. Love should never make you vulnerable to destruction. Trust? Yes. Intimacy? Absolutely. But never sign away your security. Never give up your independence. Never assume that someone's love for you will last forever. Protect yourself. Have your own bank account, your own money, your own plan. Know where the important documents are. Understand your family's finances. Don't sign things you don't fully understand, no matter how much you trust the person asking you to sign. And teach your daughters, your nieces, your young women friends. Love is not the same as blind trust. You can love someone completely and still maintain boundaries. You can build a life with someone and still protect yourself. My grandmother understood that in 1968. She loved my grandfather, but she protected herself. And because she did, I'm here today, whole and free. That's her legacy. That's what I'm passing on. Grandmama Marguerite saved my life twice, once when she set aside that money, and once when she taught me that surviving means being smart, not just being strong. I will never forget that lesson. And I'll make damn sure my daughter never forgets it either. Because we come from a line of women who survive, who endure, who protect themselves and each other. And we don't just survive, we thrive. That's the real inheritance my grandmother left me. Not $53 million, though that certainly helped. The real inheritance was knowing my own worth and never letting anyone take it from me again.